Sorry, Dan. How was it decided which Jedi to include, and what went into determining how the writing style for each would look?
Well, the which Jedi to include? I mean, at the outset they wanted to have the familiar ones from the movie, so that included Yoda. And Obi-Wan and that. So I went through and I said, okay, well, we have to include Yoda, but I want it to be a fairly unbroken line. So I assumed that Yoda may have had the book like 100 years before the movie, when he was obviously already an adult, but maybe he got this printing and he was sort of marking it up and making some comments and that, and then that found its way down to the chain. I made the decision to include a Jedi called Thame Cerulean, who, according to the expanded universe, was Dooku's immediate master. Even though Dooku obviously studied under Yoda, he also had this guy. So he's kind of obscure, and I just thought it would be interesting to have an EU-centric character in the lineup. And that goes to Dooku and Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan and Anakin and Ahsoka, who obviously you kind of have to have those guys in there. And it makes sense because they all are pretty much a unbroken chain.
Sure. And
then the other decision was that after Order 66, this book would have found its way into the hands of the Emperor, Darth Sidious, and then he would have made some comments, because this, if any book of its type, I guess, would have survived, it would have been this one, because this was, the chosen ones, this was Vader's almost. And then because Sidious preserved it, then it made sense that it would be the copy that Luke would find, because all the other ones just got destroyed. So he had it, in a vault somewhere near his throne thing, and they found that. So the idea of having individual voices was fun for me to do. I didn't decide on what typefaces were used. Right. The designers did that, but they did a pretty good job. The idea was, we had to have the graffiti looked distinct, so you knew that it was being written by different characters. We couldn't really, we thought about it, but we didn't really get to the point where you'd be able to look at the handwriting and instantly know whose handwriting it was. I think we just, so anyway, on the comments, we kind of like have a little, they all sign their comments, like I put Yoda underneath it, so it was from Yoda, and aesthetically, we had to debate whether we did that or whether we didn't have them sign it, but then you'd have to be flipping back and forth to try to identify whether that was a sans serif A or a serif, that kind of thing. So, but I think it looks pretty good, and the typefaces that they came up with, I think, are pretty close to what you'd think they might be like. Like if you look at Darth Sidious, he kind of writes in red, and it's very spidery and sinister looking, as opposed to somebody like Ahsoka's very block letters and very straightforward and kind of in your face a little bit, and Dooku's is a little bit more script oriented, or it's a little more precise, and I just think that they did a really good job of considering what voice somebody might have and how that would be expressed through their handwriting.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, the book, I have to say, is amazing, and everybody that I've showed it to has just been spellbound by it, and I've gone out and bought it, which is fantastic. A question that I've got: the Prophecy of the Chosen One chapter. Obviously, it's not in the book, but did you actually write it?
Yes, we did that. I mean, we were talking about doing that, and at some point, hey, we'll have that in there, and we're kicking around the idea, and then we had the idea that hey, also if it was really old and the book was old, then there might be some pages that were missing, and sort of all those discussions sort of came to a head by the idea that we're going to go ahead and take those pages out. They're not going to be in the book. And you'll know that they weren't supposed to be in the book because it'll be in the table of contents, and you'll be able to turn to it and see that it's missing. So in order to pull that off, I wrote a section about the Prophecy of the Chosen One, and I pretty much knew, at that point that it wasn't going to appear in the book, but some of the text appears in the margin, in the torn-off pages. So we didn't want to just have a dummy text in there. We wanted to have real text. So it was used for that purpose, even though the main bulk of the text was not going to appear. And then very late in the game, we kind of got cold feet a little bit by What if somebody buys the book and then they turn to that and the pages are missing and their reaction is, oh my God, I got a defective copy,
Yeah.
I need my money back. And so very late in the game, we added a little piece of paper by Luke that he puts in a comment to the effect of, these pages were missing when the book came into my possession. I don't, something like that, so that you could see that and be like, okay, I get it. I get what they were doing. But there was a sort of a 11th hour freak out when somebody was really worried about that, and we managed to put in one more removable, which was Luke's, reassurance to Amazon purchasers everywhere.
Yeah.
So how did you come about which artifacts you would put in?
I'm sorry, what was that?
How did you come about deciding which artifacts you would put in the book?
Oh yeah, some of them Becker and Mayer had some ideas at the outset, and then I came up with a list of ideas, and we kind of merged those two lists together. And Lucasfilm, kind of said which ones they liked it best, and then some of it was a decision as to what things could get produced by a manufacturing company. There's a practical reality. I was talking to the designer of the book, Rosanna Broccoli, who, there's one of the removables in the book, you've seen it, is a napkin from Dex's Diner that Obi-Wan was doodling on, while he was having a cup of coffee, and there's coffee stains on the napkin, and he was doing a design for a lightsaber, and it was like, hey, this is really good, I'm going to save it, so he saves it in this book. It makes kind of sense. But she had to find, a napkin company in China that would, custom print napkins with this design on it and do all this and that. And so, there's a whole practical reality to it. One of the other removables is a coin. It's a metal coin, sort of about the size, I don't know. The idea was it was going to be a Jedi credit, which is from the expanded universe, that when Corellian Jedi were made into a Jedi Knight, they had this coin that was minted. And in the original source, it says it has their face on it. So we were going to try to put a face of a Jedi on that coin, but it didn't look good. It just looked bad. It didn't look realistic. Like, we couldn't quite get the printing of the coin to be made, so we ended up using a regular sort of standardized coin. So it was those sort of practical considerations of how much is it going to cost to make, does it actually look good, where can we find the supplier, and little things like that. So the facts were, geez, I'm trying to think, but my favorite ones in there are, I love the napkin, I love the coin. There's a Starfighter patch that's very cool. It's a patch that's worn by members of the Jedi Starfighter Corps. There is the Padawan braid. I think was probably the coolest one. That was the very first idea to include with this book was the Padawan braid, because they have them, removed when they become knights. So
it's very
perhaps, cool. And Anakin gives his to Padme. So we couldn't use Anakin's, but we thought we'd have one, and I made the decision to have it be Qui-Gon's, because I didn't want it to be somebody we'd never heard of. But I didn't want to have it be Obi-Wan's either, just in case, George does something with it later. I didn't want to get overturned. So it's Qui-Gon. So we have a copy of Qui-Gon's braid in here that you can clone him from the DNA samples in the hair. So
Right.
If people haven't seen how this book is presented, we're going to put a video up to show it. But how would you describe the way that the book is presented and what went into that? I mean, it's probably the best presented book ever.
I think so too, because I was the one who worked on it, but I didn't actually see it. I wrote most of it last year. I didn't see it finished until I had seen you guys at Celebration 5 in Orlando, which was in August, and that was the first time that a finished one was actually around.
Oh, wow.
And that was the first time I had seen it, so I was really impressed. I was wowed. And if people haven't seen it yet, the idea is that this is the Vault edition. The book itself is an old sort of leather-bound-ish looking thing that looks very old and tattered, and it has all those removables in the pages, but it's housed in a mechanical high-tech vault. So you get the I hear the sound effect going.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you see the mechanical vault, and it's just silver. It doesn't look like, you don't know what it is, because it doesn't say Star Wars on the front. And you push the button, and it splits down the center, and it sort of like rises up and splits very slowly. And meanwhile, the book itself rises. There's blue pulsating lights. There's sound effects that were taken from Ben Burt's sound effects library at Skywalker Ranch, and the presentation factor is just, if you push that button and you don't, your jaw doesn't drop, I don't know, you might not be a Star Wars fan.
What was that, Adam?
I said you must be dead inside.
It was, every time I get that, I keep pushing the button because it's just so much fun to play around with. I don't know what the battery life is on it, but I've probably pushed my own copy 100 times, and it's still going strong. So fingers crossed that has a very long battery life.